Dai, perhaps you could tell us a little from your expertise of how Royal Protection would be thinking at the moment, how worried they would be, and what a sense of proportion they've got to get, because to have an event like a coronation, there has to be some risk, doesn't there?
Well, good evening. Nice to be on your programme, and well done yesterday for carrying on. I love Up the Khyber too, and it's a good foundation. And in terms of your question, they've been preparing for this and have huge experience, obviously, in preparing for such a large event. But there's always a potential for harm. As you know your history, and I certainly know it as a historian now, going back centuries, our kings and queens have been attacked. And I think you should always bear that in mind, because there are a number of different groups out there who could and maybe pose a threat. I'm not being alarmist, but you've got to prepare. And if you don't prepare, you will fail. So hopefully months of planning in conjunction with all the other agencies have actually got it right.
Is it easier to tackle the organised terrorists and hostile states because you can have agents close to them, you can be monitoring them, than it is to spot the lone madman? That Queen Victoria had any number of assassination attempts on her, which were almost entirely by lone madmen, and that I imagine is very hard for the security services to pick up.
Well, you're right, and I've no doubt GCHQ will be looking at all the established ISIS, the whole range of people, including the Irish issue, and that hasn't gone away, despite people wishing it away. There are still elements, as you know, in Northern Ireland who would like to do harm to King Charles, etc., etc. But you're right. What you have to worry about are clean skins, as they're known. Those who suddenly wake up or have woken up a week or two, or even on the morning, and say, "Go and do my bidding," whichever God they believe in. And unfortunately, we have several hundreds, if not thousands, of those who admire that kind of tactic. So they're certainly. The other one, as we saw yesterday, with those who arguably may be mentally ill or fixated. And there are a number of those who are a small minority, but they could pose and have posed. As you rightly say, Queen Victoria was attacked 9 times, but many, many more plots against her, both in Scotland, in Ireland, and so on. But yes, and virtually all, including Her late Majesty, people were plotting and trying to do harm to her here in this country, in Ireland and abroad. So you're quite right to point these things out, so you can never be complacent. And I always recall what happened in the Netherlands when a car driver drove straight through the crowd, killing 8 or 9 and injuring many more. So you've got to have all your strategies and tactics in place.
But you've got to accept some element of risk. You cannot have an 18th century carriage going through the streets of London with millions of people watching without there being some element of risk. And it's a question of being proportionate, isn't it? Otherwise, the royals would never be allowed to leave their palaces, or would always go around like the American president does in The Beast or something like that.
Well, you're absolutely right. And of course, the Metropolitan Police will have uniform there in various stages. They will look at those key areas, and they will also be looking at this group of disruptors who've promised. And I've been on several programs today, some of it with some of them, the Republicans and others, who are allegedly going to plot to disrupt. Now, the new legislation, which came out yesterday or today, will provide the police with greater powers. And I do hope the Metropolitan Police, they're very good at some of these things, will have the backbone to take these people out if necessary, because this is an ancient tradition we have, and the small minority should not be allowed to disrupt it. And I would do everything I could, if I was the police commander, to disrupt them as well.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise.